So you need to print out your template, and what I do is I just fold along the line. So you can just see here, I just fold along the line of one of them and then stick them together, and you can see I've very discreetly done that with some packing tape because I couldn't find any clear sellotape. And then you want to take your freezer paper and we're just going to trace all the different shapes. So you want a pencil, okay, I found a pencil. Right, so trace, oh, that's a good bit. Has it got any lead in it? Yeah, okay. So trace all around the shapes, and we're going to ignore the thin lines. And I'm just going to trace them all kind of exactly as they are in the positions. I'm not going to try and separate them out. Just work around all these thick lines, veering towards the kind of the outside of the line rather than the inside of the line. You can use a light box if you find that easier, but I find these lines are pretty visible. So I'll just speed this up. I didn't actually give much of an introduction to using the freezer paper. I was kind of thinking that people would have done the first of the patterns, but in case you're jumping in here just for the second block, freezer paper is a waxed paper, so it's matte on one side and has a light coating of wax on the other. So you want to put the shiny waxy side down on top of your template. You don't need to reverse anything, we're just doing it directly as it comes. And then you have the papery matte side on top, which is easy to draw on with a pencil. So you can see well, maybe you can see it's got a kind of shine to it on that side. If you've got a smaller piece than this, then you can move it apart as you need and just do sections of it. I tend to just do it all in one go without shifting the templates. Okay, so I've nearly finished. So what we're going to do after this is we're going to label it with a number for which colour fabric it is. So if you look in the pattern or the PDF, there'll be a table, and that will say, like, for applique, and it will say like A1 a certain colour, A2 a different colour. So we're going to use those codes to help us identify them. So this one's a little simpler than the first block, I think. So move that out of the way. So now I'll have a go through. So we're going to say, we're going to put a 1. I tend to put a circle around them just to make it clear. So that's that purple. This is all number 2. So you'll need to go through for what you're doing. So look, you look up. I'm making it up as I go along, you see, because I can do that. So these tummy sections are going to be a different colour, and this tail over here can be the same colour. I think I'm going to make them the same colour, I think. I'm not totally sure on that yet. The crocuses, oh no, they're not the crocuses, they're mascari, aren't they? So we're just kind of working our way through, and it gives us an idea then straight off the bat of how many colours we're dealing with. And so look, these are hyacinth, I think. So we're up to 9, 10, 11, 12, 12, 12, 12, 13, 14, 15 for the flowers, 16 for the leaves. Right, so that's not too bad at all. So there's 16 colours that we're going to be putting on this one. So next you need to find a sharp pair of scissors. So as I've said before, I just use my everyday applique scissors for this. I don't spend much money on my scissors, and I do have a sharpener somewhere, but I often just even use cutting through paper like this. They still last a good year or so before they start to blunt. So I just buy a new pair, or sometimes Father Christmas buys me a new pair. So what I'm going to do here is I've separated off the first rabbit, and I'm just going to cut these leaves separate, and the sky flowers, So on this one, I'm going to leave all of him together with those leaves because it's a little awkward. In fact, I'm going to cut this one out though. So I'm just going to be very carefully cutting exactly along the lines, cut off this allium. And I'll put that with the, so that can go, those rabbits can go together and then the alliums can go together. So we're just removing some of the surplus because when we put it down we don't want tons of overlap, otherwise we won't be laying them very close and it'll be a bit wasteful of fabric. So you could do this with a pair of paper scissors. To be honest, the kids have always lost my paper scissors, so they know they're not supposed to have these scissors. On pain of death, yeah. So let's go for the easy ones first. So we'll just remove the butterfly. Tulip. That little flower. Right, on this one we're going to separate out just that tiny bit of overlap there from the tulip leaves. So we'll cut that little flower off and we'll put that with the other little flower. There's another one. Okay, and then the next butterfly. Cut out this hyacinth, I think it was, there. And then on the last bit we're going to just carefully snip off these longer leaves. I guess that's something to do with the hyacinth. And we'll leave this all as one piece. Okay, so that's all your templates prepared. So we'll start off with the rabbits. So we're going to do this one first, and instead of cutting it out of rabbit colour like you might think, we're going to actually cut this whole shape out in the green to do with these alliums. So put your iron on warm, it doesn't need to be really hot, and take your shape and, oh, and I've just picked the wrong rabbit here, that's not good. So if you need to take it off, you just peel it away. And pick the other rabbit and put him on, because the other one hasn't got any leaves, so he doesn't need to be cut out of green. Okay, so with your scissors, I seem to have swapped scissors somewhere along the lines. I have lots of these little scissors kicking around. And we're just, see if you can see that okay. Put a light on. Any better? Sure. Okay, so we're just going to cut out that. And the advantage of doing it this way is that we've not got lots of little leafy pieces floating around, so everything's going to stay put a lot better. And if we layered it up the other way, so putting the leaves on top, you'd be layering up these long thin pieces, which isn't very easy. So we do have a little bit here where we're going to need to try and get in there to cut them out. So when you're cutting out, just carefully cut along the lines, and don't worry if you miss it a little bit. On some of the tighter shapes, it's easier to turn the fabric, so you can kind of hold your scissors still and just kind of gently close them as you turn, and that cuts them out pretty neatly. You do need to, this bit of it takes a surprisingly long time to do, to be honest. I think it's one of the slower bits, I think, really. But it's quite relaxing. You can put the telly on, just kind of, you know, listen to some music. I find it a bit funny actually, because normally I have music on all the time, but when I'm recording I can't really do that, so I have to waffle instead. No. So anyway, I'm going to carry on cutting this out, but I'll just show you what I would do for this little bit here. So your choice is here. Have you got to get in here? So sometimes I just cut along that line, and other times I'll just fold it and make a couple of little snips along here, and then I can get my scissors in. I think we can cut along there. Yeah, because even if when you do that you accidentally make the cut into some of the other fabric, and in this instance, you know, no one knows where that leaf is supposed to be. It's really up to you, so don't worry about it. Okay, this one there is a little gap, so you can just sneak in. So next, once we've got this colour up, we're going to layer up with a brown, I think, for these bunnies. You could do a grey, might look nice as well. I'm going to have a look and see what colours I've got, but you want to look, if you're not using the kits, you kind of want to have a look against what colour background you've got to make sure it doesn't get lost. The backgrounds are fairly colourful at this point, so a mid-brown should stand out quite nicely. You're also looking to balance up, if you're doing the full quilt, some of the colours in the other blocks, so I would probably stay away from a really dark brown, just because it'll look a little bit out of balance with the rest of the quilt. Okay, like that, and then when you're peeling it away, you don't want to fray it more than necessary. Well, you don't want to fray it at all, but some fraying. So just be mindful if you're pulling it against the grain that you're more likely to make it fray. It gets a little easier as you reuse the same template, because obviously it gets less sticky. This one's well stuck down. There he is. So you see some of the wax bit left on there. Right, anyway, so we've got him. So next we're going to just trim this template down to remove all these green leaves. You don't need to cut it exactly, we just need to cut enough to make it obvious to ourselves of what we're actually doing. And now you need your bunny colour. Right, well, I thought I was going to cut both rabbits from the same fabric, but I've just got enough of this one. I'm not scented off my, well, I said I just got enough on like my one for it. The kits are a bit more generous, and my one, it just squeak out of it. But I haven't got enough to cut the second rabbit out, so I'm going to go for just this one. So I'm just going to cut this full rabbit shape out. I think I turned the camera off instead of switching it back on again then. Sorry. So I just cut that shape out there. But I was just thinking, I was talking, but obviously to no one. And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you that in a second, because we're on to the next stage. So we're going to trim this template down again, and just to the chest and the tummy areas. And what we're going to do is, we're not going to do that bit now. We're going to put these to one side, because I want to use the same fabric. Oh, sorry, don't know what that is. I want to use the same fabric for the tail on the other rabbit. So we're going to just put these over to one side, and we'll cut out the left rabbit. Okay, so we've got the second rabbit. I'm going to cut him out, and he's on a slightly more taupey one. So anyway, I was saying before, I forgot to actually record it, that I get asked sometimes of why I don't have a full fabric list for the quilts, because I do put a fabric list for both the applique and the background in for each block, but I don't add them all up and work out what they would be. So sometimes I get people a bit miffed about that. And I guess that is standard, but it's standard in quilts of where it would say something like, you need a fat quarter of this, you need half a yard or half a metre of that. My quilts aren't really designed that way. I put them in because you need to know what you're going to cut from, but otherwise they're scrappy quilts. So I don't think you'd get full fabric lists if you've got like some kind of watercolour, you know, there's ones where they're like pixelated. You're not going to get one where someone worked out like a cross stitch in exactly, you know, you need like a 2-inch square of this, and you know, and then of colour 1054 you need a 2-inch square of that. So on these ones there's a lot of fabrics in them, and the idea is you have a good selection of scraps and you just pick something that appeals. So, you know, it doesn't need to be this colour brown, any brown will do. You know, it will all work out. So yeah, so that's why I don't do it, because it would be, I often use kind of in a given block, including the backgrounds, you know, between 30 to 50 fabrics. So if you did that by 9, that's an awful lot of... I don't think there'd be a huge amount of duplication, really. And if I did write it, the chances are then what would happen is someone would cut it out wrong, and then they'd be like, oh, I couldn't cut it out. So, yeah, we're just not doing that. So, peel away him. There it goes. No. I'm not sure if they're kissing or they're sniffing, but they're friends. Definitely acquaintances. Okay, and we just trimmed his tail off, and we're going to take these 2 other bits from before and we'll cut out their tummies now. So you could go for a white here, but I've gone for a darker cream because I don't want it to, although saying that, a point to check. Worth looking at where this is going to, these are going to lay out, so just to make sure that I'm not going to just lose the, so you'd be, it's quite, yeah, they're about an inch, aren't they, from the, just over an inch from the edges. But we could probably come in a little bit more than that, actually, because we've got those alliums. So it'd be something like that, isn't it? So if I cut out this, it's just worth checking. I'm just, I don't know if you can see here. Yeah, I don't think that's going to get too lost. I think we're good. So, just checking that it wasn't going to end up right on a cream bit, and then you wouldn't have any definition. And it does fall a little bit on it. Oh, now I've lost a bit of the tail. Where's the tail gone? You can probably, not stuck to my iron. Ah, there it is. You can probably see it going, it's there, it's there. Okay, so I'll cut these ones out, and you can lay them on as you go, which is definitely helpful if you're picking the colours, because to go with it, so that you're making sure you're not picking something that's going to really badly clash or look unbalanced. Right, again, I must keep track of when I'm recording better. So I was just laying out these little bits here. I'll just move it across so you can see a bit better. So is that better? It looks a bit dark. They don't look as dark in real life. So I've got his tail on, which is quite small, and I've got these 2 bits. He does have a little bit of tail marked in the pattern, but we're just going to fill that in with some threads because it's very small. And on the pattern, on the template here, it does have a thicker line. So I think when I did it, I was intending on doing that foot separately. But you could, if you wanted, cut that out again out of the scraps. If I can find whatever I did with it. No, I can't. But I don't think it really matters. It's pretty obvious to be able to separate that foot from the main body. I mean, it's just a zigzaggy line going across there. So I think we won't worry about that. Okay, so next we're going to look at these alliums, and then we can work on the garland. So for these alliums, I'm using this spotty pink fabric. Most of the time I use what's called watercolour batiks, or sometimes they're called smoke batiks or polo batiks, but they're basically just a hand-dyed fabric. And these ones, you can see, are dotty. And while I don't generally like using pattern ones, occasionally for you know, especially if I've not got, you know, I mean, I do have a very good selection of fabrics, but sometimes I haven't got anything in quite the colour I like that's plain. Or other times, I mean, you know, as they look quite alliumy. Is that a word? So sometimes that can work quite nice. So on this one, I cut around the ear before and separated this one, but we don't really need to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of imagine the circle it would be. And it doesn't matter if it's actually circular, because I'm just going to tuck it behind his ear and no one's going to know. You see? So, like that. And I think they all stand out enough. They kind of blend quite nicely. We're trying to get some height in, so we won't make these too small. I think that works. Is that the right way around? Just check that it goes hard to tell, isn't it? There we go. So that brings some of these nice pinks in from over here. Quite nicely. So next, let's do the 2 butterflies first, because they're nice and easy. So we're going to, depending on what colour you've done your background, I think I'm going to do these one of the butterflies are blue, just because it is hard getting blue flowers in, because not that many blue flowers. And this one we'll do as a orange tipped one, so white then orange. So I've just cut this butterfly out of the white, so we're going to just trim that down now just to the wingtip, which we're going to cut out of orange. It's a rather light blue, maybe could have gone a little bit darker on that. But we'll add some blue embroidery, so that'll pick it out a little bit more. Right, so I think let's work on these down here. So I think we could do with maybe something quite a bright green here to make it zing a little. So having said that, I always use the watercolour ones. I've just picked this one, which I've no idea where I found this fabric, but I seem to have quite a bit of it. But I think it's just going to add the colours we want, and because this is quite a small section, we're not really going to get very much of this pattern going in it. So it's more just the colours that we're going to get. So we've got these mascara necks, and you could really go for lots of different colours of mascara, but I'm going to go for this nice one here, which is quite a bluey purple with bits of pink and turquoise in. So we've got some quite light colours here, so I think that will look nice and stand out. Okay, so we're going to start, I think, in terms of picking colours. I think these are primroses, so I definitely want these yellow. So I'm going to cut this full shape out of the green, and probably more of a yellow toned green. So I'm going to just trim this down to just the 3 primrose flowers, and I'm going to cut these out of a yellow. So I'm just laying out this first block here so that I can see how this is all fitting and check that the colours are okay. I've put quite a bright yellow here, but I don't want it to all be namby-pamby colours. I want it to, you know, spring is nice and bright and cheerful. So the next bits are going to be this hyacinth. So I think I'll probably go for quite a light colour here to stand out against this dark. Ignore, I don't know if you can hear the kids in the background. They're on a strike day, so some arguments going on. So this one is a very, very slight pattern, but it's hardly there, and it's kind of a overly patterned, so not a terrible one to have for this hyacinth. So I've just got this one out, and again I think something light for the green leaves here. On the leaves I don't tend to worry too much about them being totally accurate in this bit. If I was doing like a study, then I would pay more attention to it, but I'm going to go more what looks pretty and then exactly what it should be. So this goes just above there. I'm just lay this out and we'll work them out in a bit where they should go exactly. Right, leaves next. So I actually decided I would use a darker green. Not sure if this is, it's not quite the same green as here. I've forgotten what this one is. I think it might be the same green, but from a different bolt. So they are different. And we'll save that lighter green to the tulips. I think it's the last bit to put on. So go. So that goes running. It kind of sort of runs along there, doesn't it? Butterfly must be more up here. Okay, right. So I think the next one to do would be to try this one. So that's fitting along there. So we will go for something lighter. So I've gone for this yellowy one, which is quite similar to the tulip colour that I used in the first block. So I kind of am tying it in a little bit. And then I think we will do these little blossoms of whatever they are I think I've put little branches, so I think it is blossom. So I think we'll do those in maybe a very light pink. I would use white, but we've already got quite a lot of light bits going on there, so we'll make it cherry blossom and make it pink. I'm not going to worry about cutting that little bit out, because if I cut that bit out, it means I have to align it there, and I might like to just shift it around a little bit. Let's go somewhere like that, and we're aiming to come up to kind of halfway through this block, because they're kind of where our curve's going, which it feels like maybe not quite in the right position yet. I often find that I end up kind of not coming down enough, but we'll see. So we're going to cut out scissors. So I'm just going to cut out these little blossoms. So there's five of them. Yeah, because we're very nearly there now, haven't we? We've just got to cut out we've just got these blossoms and the tulip flower to go, and we are done. So let's do these little blossoms out of a pink first. So I said a pink, but then when I was hunting through for light pinks, I found this little peach, which is very nice. So we shall use this instead, because I think that'll look really pretty over here. That one there. So we've just got this tulip to go, and I think I'd have a look what tulip colours that you can get, because it kind of feels like something cool here would be a good idea. So for this last tulip, I've decided to go for this one, which is a kind of a mottled one, and I'm going to attempt to slightly fussy cut it, and just by making I've just positioned it so that the lightest colours are up towards the tips of the petals, and we're going to, it's a little bit muted on the colours, quite yellowy, but we'll zing it up a bit with some thread. But I just want quite a light colour in here, and we've already got the yellows, so I'm going for that kind of, you know, the whiter tulips where they have like kind of a green splash up the side. We're going to go for that a bit. So this comes up here. Right, so we need to do it a little bit positioning now, because that's not going to quite fit. So I don't think it did definitely fit, so I've not arranged it quite right. So we could pull this whole thing down a little bit, so that we need to stay 1/4 of an inch from this edge seam. But we can go quite close, and then it will really butt together nicely. And then, so we're just going to, I'm going to move, can you see what I'm doing here? What I'm using the other block, so I can check that it still swings round nicely here. So we could do with moving all of this down a little bit. The tulip. Okay, so that's looking better now. So and there a little bit. Turn that butterfly up a touch. There we go. I think that looks pretty smooth there. Just check again back that way. And when we lose the 1/4 inch, it's going to be more. So we could probably just bring that down just a little bit more. There, I'd say. And again, I'm going to check by just turning it this side. Okay, and that looks a nice line there. I've been bringing it up a little bit. So just keep on. I mean, you can do it by like laying the pattern on top and keep going, but otherwise just kind of arrange it until you feel like you've got a nice, we want this to be a nice circular wreath working in the middle. Obviously if you're just doing this one block, then you know, it doesn't matter nearly so much. You've just got a corner of pretties going on. Right, so I think that is everything cut out. We've got a good range of colours, and that will be more blue when we sew it up. And we've got our rabbits cut out. I've actually tucked on this one, I actually tucked that in front of the green leaf but behind the ear, and then that saves having any of the ear green bit showing on that bit there. Just make sure it's, if you kind of comb it with your fingernail, you can kind of scoop them on a little bit. Okay, and so I think we're ready to sew. So you need to get a piece of stabiliser, the right size. I'm going to put that underneath. If you have been using your template at any point and laying it underneath, do remove your template before you sew, because a few people do that and then accidentally sew their template into the quilt, which is not ideal. Okay, right, sewing next.